hope that you're all safe and well during this scary and troubling time. It's been a while since I've done a sat down video, but recently on Instagram I announced about the fact that I auditioned for The Greatest Dancer Season 2. Originally I wasn't going to say anything because I felt like it sounded a bit boasty, like announcing it. The only reason that I told people on Instagram was because my friends who knew about it for one reason or another, they all really wanted to tell their friends and family. So they asked me to just do a big post announcing it so they didn't have to keep it a secret anymore. But also it didn't seem like I was lying to people and by not talking about it. It was really difficult, like trying to remember who I told what to. People were just saying, just make a video explaining it. It was probably the most surreal thing that I've ever done, and it was a really mentally and physically demanding experience. So I'm going to go a bit into how it all started and what led up to my audition, and then my audition day and all of the ins and outs of all of that. So in March 2019, a couple of weeks after Move It, I was just in the studio messing around and I decided to improvise to a song by Bjork called Utopia, and I kind of made it quite like insectoid. It was basically about me being an insect. So I posted it on Instagram. I didn't think anything of it because to me it was just another post like to show me experimenting in the studio. I got an email a couple of days later and it was from someone from Thames TV who was scouting people for The Greatest Dancer Season 2. I actually got scouted for The Greatest Dancer Season 1, but I didn't tell anyone about it because at the time it was an amazing opportunity, but I was just about to do my GCSEs. And I didn't want anything to interfere with that because I put so much effort into my academic life and trying to balance that with my dance life. Also, I wanted to see what it was going to be all about because when I got told it was going to be a dance show, like what I got told was nothing like what The Greatest Dancer Season 1 actually was like. Like I didn't know anything about the mirrors. So I decided to not do The Greatest Dancer Season 1. So in the message, they said that they thought it was quite interesting, like my style and like my contemporary movement and my kind of outlook on dance. And so the first thing that they asked me to do was send in a 30-second video explaining who I am, what my kind of dance ethos is. I'll show you here kind of like a clip of what I said. Hello, I'm Lucy Turner and I'm 17 years old, and I really want to share with everyone, especially younger dancers, that dance can be whatever they want it to be. And then they got back to me saying, yeah, you're on to the next stage. There was a lot of like moving on to the next stages during this whole process. Next thing that I did is they asked me to record a dance video, like a routine that I might perform. And so this is when I started recording my tree solo, as my friends like to call it. It wasn't like a proper video where I was doing the exact choreography that I knew that I'd be doing. Like I was pretty much just improvising at this point, and I just sent them like some clips of different bits of the song, of me dancing to it, and I sent that on to them and they were like, yep, that's cool, we like that, the producers like that. The next thing that I did was I filled out loads of different forms to do with the production, so me basically saying, yep, you can use my face, my dancing, my likeness, so like my voice and stuff. This was all happening pretty much whilst I was at school. I spent a lot of time having to go outside to have like these private calls, so a lot of my friends were always like, where are you disappearing to? And in the contract they basically also made me sign saying that I couldn't tell anyone. They spoke to me for a bit about what my story is, so I spoke about lots of different things to do with like I was bullied when I was younger, and that kind of led me to find dance as an escape. And I spoke about my struggles with hypermobilities, and I spoke about that one of the things that really drives me to be a dancer is the fact that my grandma was a performer and dancer, but I never met her because she died before I was born. So I spoke about a few different things that they were choosing between to kind of introduce me as an act. Next thing they asked me to do was send 3 to 4 videos of someone from my family or friends doing a VT, so the intro bit before someone dances on The Greatest Dancer. So I sent a video from my mum and my sister and my aunt, and originally they chose my auntie to be my VT person, but then they later decided that they wanted someone who was really close to me and my journey, so it ended up being my mum who went for shooting the VT. So I think it was some day in July, my mum went down to Thames TV and my mum spoke to producers for about an hour about my journey as a dancer and like lots of different questions that they asked that they wanted to include in the VT. I didn't get to go to the VT thing, so I have no clue what was actually said. I asked my mum, but because she was speaking for an hour, she can't 100% remember what was said either, so that's all I can really say about the VTs. So as it was getting closer and closer to August, which is when they have their auditions at the ICC in Birmingham, there was a lot of discussion about the music, where basically I wrote down a couple of tracks that I could choreograph something to. They say that they get back to me about what rights the BBC have for different tracks. There was a lot of back and forth about what song might appeal to an audience best, because the Bjork song was quite alternative and a lot of people probably wouldn't have liked all of the kind of insect sounds. So we decided on Smother by Daughter. Whilst everything was happening in this process, it was all completely unconfirmed. Like, I didn't know if anything was going to become of it. But then in late July, maybe 2 weeks before the audition started, I got a call saying that I had an audition and it was going to be on the 12th of August. So a couple of weeks before my audition, my migraine medication brand changed, and I remember thinking at the time, I literally bet this will somehow affect my audition, even though it was technically the same medication, just a different brand, like a different company had made it, so it shouldn't have made a difference. But it actually started making me very ill leading up to the audition, and it really kicked off at the audition. A week before the audition, I rented out a studio to do a practice. They wanted to see the whole dance and try and figure out the spacing in the actual studio. I recorded my whole dance in the studio with my phone recording, and she put the 2 and 2 together and figured out that I was going to be auditioning. It got to the 8th and 9th of August and I rented out a different studio to try and get some rush practice in, because I'd be like auditioning in a couple of days. I remember on these 2 days I started feeling really, really tired, and when I'd be practicing my routine, I just didn't feel up to it. Like, I forced myself to go and practice, but then as soon as I practiced for a couple of hours, I just felt exhausted and just went home. And then around these 2 days, it's when the Greatest Dancer announced that Todrick Hall would be on the dance captain panel and that Curtis was going to be the new receptionist. So when I saw all of that, I started being a bit freaked out, because it was just a lot of adrenaline and a lot of stuff was happening. So I started getting nervous a couple of days before, but I just didn't really think anything of it. So on the 9th, we drove down to Birmingham so we could have a couple of days down there before my audition, so I could get used to where the location was. And we went down the day before my sister's birthday, so we had quite a lot of family time down there as well. So the day, my whole kind of version of the day is quite hazy, so these are just all of the things that I can kind of remember. So I had really bad sleep leading up to the audition. I didn't feel great when I woke up on the audition day, but I just got up, I got dressed, I did my makeup, and I was just kind of calming myself and getting myself in the right mindset. I tried to eat, but I really just couldn't. Like, I felt so nauseous for like no reason at all. I did think, oh, it's probably just because I'm nervous, but I'll be fine when I get there. Went along to the ICC and I thought, oh, I'll just eat later on. And when I got there, one of the team came to get me and take me to where the sign-in place was. And so I went to sign in and I met all of the people who I'd been speaking to the entire time. And when I was signing in, Alex and Jacqueline, the ballroom couple with the wheelchair, which they had an amazing performance, they were there signing in. So I got to talk to a few of the acts. Because I was 17 at the time, I got assigned to a chaperone. So I had a lovely chaperone for the entire day, just kind of started stretching and just waited for like the next things to happen. I tried to eat a bit of food. So then I went to go film my arrival at the Greatest Dancer, so walking along the banks like near the river. It was quite a lot of walking around places, and I was feeling quite exhausted because obviously I hadn't ate anything or slept very well. People on the team were so lovely. I genuinely did have like the most fun time, and they filmed me turning up to audition at the Greatest Dancer, so pressing the bell to turn up. Then I went back inside and just started eating, but then I got called out again because apparently my mic didn't work. So I had to re-record the entire turning up again. And then it got to filming in like this little studio, this pretend studio which had a floor and some walls. I basically just was marking my dance, like getting ready, and just kind of like showing off my personality. Had a lot of banter with like the crew, like everybody at Thames TV and The Greatest Dancer were really funny, and they were really kind as well, so I was definitely in safe hands for the entire day. Whilst I was waiting to go and film me kind of warming up in the studio and just stretching, Jessica, the hip hop dancer who was in episode 4, she was just doing her thing. She was slaying me. I remember I was talking to my mum and I was like, whoa, she's got the fire. And then I got told, okay, well, you might be on within the next couple of hours. So I decided, okay, now's the best time to eat. So I had some of their soup. I started to feel really sick very quickly, and it was lovely soup, but because I hadn't eaten anything that day, my stomach just felt really like horrible. And then like the next thing I knew, I got up and I was running and pushing past all these people dressed as Tudors and people from medieval times to throw up in a bin. I sometimes throw up quite a lot because of my hypermobilities, and I've explained that before in a previous video. And also sometimes when I get really, really nervous about something, I might just feel really sick. So I thought it was that, but the Greatest Dancer team wanted to be sure that nothing else was going on. So I got assigned the paramedic, who was really lovely, and he spoke to me for a while about, oh, were you just nervous and stuff like that. I obviously wasn't thinking, oh, my medication changed, so I just thought I must be really nervous. Like, I started feeling really bad about myself because I was like, Lucy, you don't ever feel nervous about this kind of stuff. Like, when it comes to dancing, I'm never nervous. So I was just really confused about what was going on. I got taken to the paramedic's room and he took my blood pressure, my blood glucose levels. He said that I was technically in perfect health, but obviously it turns out I had a lot of unforeseen problems to do with my migraines and my medication, which obviously couldn't really be shown with just the blood pressure and blood glucose levels. I did get told that I could be the last performer on if I wanted to postpone my audition, because this was the last day of audition, so it's not like I could be moved to another day or anything. But I got told, oh, well, you can dance last if that's what you need to do. But it got to a point in the running order where they just said, okay, you're just gonna have to go on now. I had not had a chance to practice anything at all. Like, I stretched for a tiny bit, but by the time that I got told, oh, you should go on soon, I was really just feeling really inflexible, and I hadn't had a chance to practice my dance at all. So I just felt very unprepared, but I thought, you know what, I've done all of this networking to try and get here. I'm not gonna just throw that all down the drain and not dance. Like, I'm definitely gonna dance. So I was outside the waiting room where Curtis does his receptionist bit, and I was just stretching and like trying to warm up as best as I could. But it was still pretty difficult, and obviously there was still a lot of nerves. So whilst I was stretching, the person before me about to go in was the insane ballet dancer who was on series 1, Yasawi, and I got told, well, when you go in, you're gonna have a chat to him a bit before he goes in, and then you're gonna wait and then you're gonna go in, kind of thing. So whilst editing, I just remembered a few things that happened. So just before I went in to speak to Curtis, the judges all had a break and they all came to the room next door to me, and the door was open, so I gave them a wave, so at least I did get to see the judges. So I went in the room and I didn't see Yasawi anywhere, but I basically spoke to Curtis for 20 minutes. He was really lovely, spoke a bit about my background, and he was like, oh, so what other dance styles do you do? So I named all of the dance styles that I do, including, I said, ballroom. And obviously Curtis being a ballroom dancer, I was like, oh, yo, get up, let's have a dance. And I immediately was just like, oh my gosh, I've forgotten every single ballroom step that I've ever learned. And I just was like, oh, you know what? I felt so sick today. I'd dance with you, mate, but I really just cannot right now. I was still thinking that I was gonna throw up at any second, so I just went, I'm sorry, mate, you're right, I just can't. One of the main things that I did when I was speaking to him was I was teaching him how to do a lot of my finger contortions and all of the other stuff that's in my tree solo, and it was quite funny. And you know what, he pretty much got it. At one point Curtis left, so I just was stretching, doing my own thing, and then he came back in and told me that it was time to go on, and I was like, and I got told originally that I would have some time to do my inhaler because I'm asthmatic and have any medications that I need to have, but because of me being ill, I guess they were all running behind schedule, so I just got told straight away, no, you have to go on now. Backstage, my mum said that she thought that I was dying because there was solid 2 minutes between my VT and me talking to Curtis and me coming on. And my mum said that during the 2 minutes, lots of people went and left to go to the toilet. I was being told all of these instructions okay, well, when you're going on now, when you go down, you have to open this certain door and you have to push it, you can't pull it. And when you go in, there's going to be somebody instructing you where to go, like just have a bit of a stretch, do what you want. And then they were like, oh, well, when you come back out, if you don't get through, then you're going to have to open this door, you have to push it, not pull it. And I was tripping, like my vision was kind of blurry, but I just thought, you know what, let's just go on and do it. So when I went in, I immediately noticed that the floor was quite slippy, and Yasawi, who went on before me, literally had like fallen over in the audition. I was starting to get quite worried, but I thought, okay, I'll manage it, it's okay, like I may be dying, but it's fine. And so loads of emotions and adrenaline was running through me at this point, because I was like, I love Glee, I love Mr. Shu, and so I was like, oh my god, Matthew Morrison's watching me dance. And I've loved Oti ever since she joined Strictly. She was a big choreographic inspiration to me. And growing up, when I did my first ever talent show doing dance, the act before mine was singing Cheryl Cole. Ever since I like discovered the internet and started self-teaching myself as a dancer, I really loved Todrick Hall and all of his Disney videos. Whilst I was crouching here waiting for my music to start, I was thinking, oh my gosh, these 4 people have actually been quite like really influential to me growing up, and I'm about to dance in front of these people and I'm probably gonna mess it up because I'm feeling really ill. It was really surreal because obviously you're in like a dance studio, it's not like you can see the audience, and so it's just kind of like dancing to myself. I started dancing, everything was going okay. There were only a few stumbles and like stuff where I slipped on the floor, but other than that, like my audition was kind of okay. But as it was getting to the end before my last tiny section, I literally was thinking, I literally bet I've got like 30% or something, like there's no way that these doors are gonna like open. Finished my dance and the doors didn't open, and I was like, oh well, that's a shame. But to be honest, I was like, oh my god, I'm probably gonna throw up, so I need to like leave the room. But I completely in that moment forgot what they told me to do about leaving, so I stood there for a bit just like, what do I do now, before my chaperone waved me over and I left. My mum's perspective, when she was sat in the audience, she was like watching the video, and she said the only thing she can remember was that she thought, oh, I look like an old hag. I couldn't even remember what she had said, so I don't actually know what was ever said in the VT. I think my mum was just so stressed about me being ill that she just couldn't like take in everything at the same time. I was dancing and my mum said that she was looking around and she was like, all of these lights are on, like I can't see any light that isn't on. And so she was really confused about why the doors didn't open. The good thing is that I got told what the judges' reactions were. I got a standing ovation, and I got Todrick Hall standing up and grabbing a remote, being like, why won't this damn mirror open? The fact that the judges liked my dance and that I got a standing ovation, and the fact that Todrick Hall was trying to like make the mirror open, it was a really crazy experience for me. From my perspective, after I danced, everything was very hazy. They rushed me a glass of water because they could tell that I was dying, and they were like, oh, we're so sorry, like you were one of our favourites and like we're really sorry you didn't get through. But to be honest, I was just like, you know what, I've been ill, I did the best that I could. And then they said, do you want to know what score you got? And I was just drinking. I was like, yeah, sure, go on. And they said, you got the closest that anybody has at all, which was 74.2%. So I was 0.8% away from the mirrors opening. So the fact that I was so close, despite the fact that I was really ill, really is the thing that means the most to me, is that I still managed to do myself justice, despite the fact that I was so ill. And so the casting director came up to me and was like, oh, I'm really sorry, like, please come back next year because we'd love to have you again and be able to show you. Basically, after this, I went to a back room and answered questions about how I thought I did and why I thought the mirror didn't open. And I accidentally kept calling the dance captains judges, and they had to keep making me like redo the entire thing because I was just like tripping off of my medication. And then after that, I pretty much went home because I just needed to get home and rest because I was exhausted and like dying. It was very sweet of the Grit Stars because for the next couple of weeks I had the casting director and some people on the medical team and the psychologist all calling me, asking me if I'm okay. By that point, I'd already been to the doctors and found out that the thing that was messing me up and making me really sick, it made me not want to eat, it made me not be able to sleep, it made me throw up whenever I tried to eat. Like, it took me a couple of months, maybe half a year, to try and get back to where I was. At Christmas I got an email saying, thanks again for your audition, but unfortunately we're not going to show you this time because there are so many like people, and especially because I was on the last day, which was the same day where they pick people for the team, so the episode was going to be a lot shorter. So they only showed 4 or 5 acts that night, so I was like, yeah, you know what, fair enough. And at that point I still thought, oh, I can audition next year, but obviously I can't because The Greatest Dancer has been cancelled on the BBC, so they're not having a season 3. So I thought that I'd just share what my experience is with everybody. So thank you very much for watching my little story time. I hope you found it somewhat enlightening or interesting. I hope you all stay safe during this quarantine and during this whole COVID-19 pandemic, and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye guys!